The first time the Americans saw the Australians' boots, they laughed. It was at a forward staging post outside Phuoc Tuy province, just as a joint patrol briefing had wrapped up. On one side, you had the Americans, young, sharp-geared, and outfitted head to toe in regulation-issue kit. They were sipping instant coffee, looking every bit the part of the world's most well-funded military. Then, the SAS team arrived. 5 men, dirty, calm, and wearing boots that looked absolutely butchered. The upper leather had been sliced away from the ankles down. There were no laces, only strips of canvas, tape, and rubber bands holding the remains together. One American sergeant, sporting a loud voice and mirrored sunglasses, couldn't help himself. He pointed and cracked, "What's the matter, Charlie? Steal your supply truck?" Laughter rolled across the sandbags, but the SAS didn't even look up. One wiry scout simply adjusted the tape around his foot and kept walking toward the tree line. To the Americans, it looked like sloppiness or a poverty of supply. They believed that real soldiers, backed by doctrine and funding, didn't mutilate their gear. But as they prepared to step into the humid depths of the Vietnam jungle, they were about to learn that the difference between standard and smart is often measured in inches of trench foot. The American team consisted of 6 men from Recon and Special Operations units, the literal textbook examples of U.S. doctrine. Their jungle boots were laced tight to the mid-calf, their ERDL camouflage was starched, and their M16s were pristine with regulation-length slings. Their leader, Lieutenant Clark, was a man who believed in systems, fire teams, and equipment checklists. He didn't fear the jungle. He believed it could be controlled and navigated with the right equipment. As he glanced at the Australians, Clark felt a sense of pity. Their gear looked like it had survived another war entirely. Bleached shirts, webbing patched with local fabric, and a machete wrapped in cloth to keep it silent. Not a single one carried a radio. And then there were those boots, torn open like old boxing gloves. Clark leaned toward his comms man and whispered, "They're going to lose their feet by nightfall." The Americans felt confident because the weather was holding. The jungle was muggy but dry, and their boots were doing their job. Clark took the lead, thinking, if they want to hike barefoot through hell, let 'em. We'll see who's limping first. Hours into the patrol, the clouds gathered. The jungle began its lesson not with an ambush, but with water, the kind that seeps and never forgets where it settles. Unlike the Americans, the 5 Australians didn't walk like men on parade. They moved like predators, light and silent. Their gear was stripped to the bare minimum. One carried a rusted Owen gun with a block for a stock. Another had electrical tape on his L1A1 to prevent metal-on-metal noise. During a break, Clark finally asked, "What happened to your boots?" A broad-chested corporal with a thick Queensland accent looked at him like he'd asked why trees were green. "Cut 'em," he said. When Clark blinked in confusion, the Aussie smirked. "Mate, in 2 hours, it's not a boot, it's a bloody bucket. Rather cut it myself than let it rot my feet off." The rain didn't arrive with thunder. It started as a slow, heavy drip that eventually turned into a deluge. For the Australians, nothing changed. Water ran down their legs, straight through the cut boots and back into the soil. Their feet stayed light. For the Americans, the nightmare began with a squelch. Their regulation boots filled with water and refused to let it go. Their socks became heavy sponges. Every step became a struggle against mud that turned into sticky traps. The drainage holes mentioned in their manuals were useless, clogged instantly by mud. By the second hour, Clark's heels were raw. Every step burned.
By the next morning, the jokes were dead. Silence took over. Not for stealth, but because pain had consumed all their energy. The Americans were shifting weight, trying to mask the damage, but the jungle had already won. Overnight, hot spots had turned into tearing skin and fluid-filled blisters. One American private finally collapsed on a log and peeled back his sock. The skin came with it. Pus, blood, and shredded tissue lined his sole. His toes were a swollen purple. The protection of the regulation boot had become a rot-inducing trap of moisture and friction. The Australian corporal circled back. He didn't gloat. He simply reached into his pouch and pulled out a sharpened hacksaw blade. He held it out to Clark. "If you want to stay on your feet, you might want to ruin those boots, too." Clark hesitated. Pride still held some weight, but by that afternoon, the misery was absolute. When the corporal saw another American, Private Louis, bleeding through his laces, he didn't ask permission. He knelt and sawed through the boot's upper leather himself. Seeing his men in agony, Clark finally took the blade. As he cut into the leather he had once polished with pride, he realized the truth. The Australians weren't being sloppy. They were practicing a design perfected by time and blood. By the fourth day, the Americans had stopped fighting the jungle and started flowing with it. They had learned to tape their ankles like the SAS and had carved their own boots into better versions. They understood now that the SAS's silence and stripped-down gear wasn't desperation. It was the product of the jungle's quiet feedback loop. When they finally returned to the firebase, a logistics officer saw their mangled footwear and asked, "What the hell happened to your boots?" Clark didn't answer. He didn't need to. Private Louis, hobbling on a boot held together by tape and blood, simply muttered, "We made them better." That night, Lieutenant Clark sat in his hooch and looked at the dull, rusting saw blade the Australian had given him. He opened his patrol report. Under Recommendations for Field Teams with Optional Blade Tools for Boot Modification, Field Drainage Essential, he added one final remark for the brass back home. Let the new guys laugh. The rain will teach them.
Military history is written in blood, but it is often won in the details, like the cut of a boot or the weight of a pack. If you found this story of SAS survival and adaptation insightful, hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the untold stories of elite units. What's the most important piece of gear you've ever had to modify in the field? Drop your stories in the comments below. We want to hear how you've adapted to survive. Don't forget to click the bell icon so you never miss an episode. Stay sharp, stay prepared, and we'll see you in the next one.